our first look at some of the damage here in Boca Raton. We can see this huge old tree that's down here on the street. You can see this light pole here that's twisted up inside of it. You can see that sharp bend right there. We tracked this pole all the way back over here, and you can see the clean break that happened here. This old tree has been here for many years based on its size. No match for these hurricane force winds as we see that light pole down here in Boca Raton. Guys, back to you.
Wow.
I tell you, the damage assessments are starting to come in. It's going to be very interesting when the sun rises and we get a glimpse of the wrath of destruction from Hurricane Irma. We'll take a quick break. Be right back.
Welcome back to continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma here this evening. We want to get to Ashley Henson. She's live in the newsroom with a little news about rescue in Indian River County. Ashley.
Yeah, I want to take you to these pictures, guys. 12 people have just been rescued by Fellsmere Police and the Indian River County Sheriff from flooding waters. They were transported to Fellsmere Elementary Shelter. I want to take you to this picture. They're all doing okay. Thankfully, we're not really sure why they had to be rescued, whether it was from their home or possibly driving through the flooded streets. But again, they are doing okay. Also want to take you to Delray Beach Police Twitter account. Delray Beach Utilities officials say if you aren't drinking the water, don't use it. Electrical outages affect sewage pumping stations, so anything like flushing the toilet, using the dishwasher or the shower, they do not want you to do at this time. So that is the latest on social media. We'll continue to monitor it and bring you any updates as we get them, guys.
All right, Ashley, thank you very much. You know, our storm team, within the past 30 minutes, they've been monitoring Hurricane Irma and somewhat of a change in this track here. They've been watching it very closely. I want to toss it over to James Whelan with more on what we've been talking about. James.
Yeah, we're seeing it take really the track a little bit farther inland here. Expected to go up the coast, but as you can see, it's over here. The coast, you can barely see the line, but it's over here. Still a very strong storm. We're still seeing very gusty winds. Even though we're not seeing the rain, we've gotten to this dry slot here. We're not seeing the rain so much, but the wind still very, very gusty. We don't need this rain when you have a hurricane just to our west to get all that wind in here. So even though it's not raining, very, very gusty winds are going to continue at least for the next few hours or so. They'll start to taper off from south to north here through the overnight hours. By tomorrow morning, we'll be talking about only tropical storm force wind gusts, and then taper it down. And by tomorrow night, we'll be even out of that here. But you see the center clearly over here. This is Fort Myers is over there. You see it at the bottom of your screen. Tampa over here. Tampa is getting pounded. Orlando right in this band just went through Orlando, and we've been getting reports of wind gusts 60, even up to 70 or so miles per hour, and that band stretches offshore there. We had a couple tornado warnings too around the Cape and Melbourne area, even very close to the National Weather Service building there in Melbourne. But that has now moved on up. They have a little dry air filtering on in. Vero Beach, probably going to see your wind pick up a little bit here. Vero and Fort Pierce, I know you've really taken it on the chin here with this, but you're going to see a little bit more here as the storm is just getting to your latitude. So that means it's the closest that it's going to come to you right now. So the strongest winds moving through with that too right now in Vero Beach and down to Fort Pierce and Port St. Lucie also. Let's zoom in and take a closer look, and you're just seeing some light rain, but that rain is really whipping through. We can see wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour still. Could see the wind gusts up there. It's just going to be a constant blow up there here for another couple of hours. Even down into Palm Beach County, we're not seeing the rain, but still we're feeling all that wind out there for sure. And back to the west, here it is. The storm started to move. Well, it looks like Sebring might even take a direct hit from the top part of the eye here. That will move on through. And you see down to the south in Fort Myers, they're now picking up, even though they're not the rain, the wind coming in straight out of the west and possibly even northwest here. That's going to cause a little bit of a storm surge there. And even down to the south into Fort Myers, the wind more straight onshore for them, where it was offshore before. I think that's Fort Pierce, they said here. So here's the latest, though. This is the 10 o'clock update here. The wind's 105 miles per hour. That's a Category 2 storm moving to the north at 14. So it's not milling around at all. 14 is a pretty quick clip here. And the forecast track puts it over Tampa, but a little bit, we'll have to see what the 11 o'clock update has, because its current trajectory is straight north. So straight north right here. So kind of hugging the outside of the cone. Now, obviously the cone is here because it could be anywhere inside the cone. It could be right on the edge of the cone here. It could be right on the edge of the cone here. Just so happens it's right on the edge of the cone right here. So I think we're going to see a shift there to the east here at the 11 o'clock hour. Then it moves close to Tallahassee, but if this shifts over a little bit, it's probably going to bend off towards the west a little bit more. It's just doing it a little bit later. Drops down to tropical storm strength then, and then moves up into Alabama and Georgia and rains itself out there. So here's the loop, and you see it really didn't deviate from that straight south to north track here over the past couple of hours. Or really, this is a 12-hour loop, so 12 hours of really straight north. Didn't really go over towards Fort Myers or Sarasota. It just went straight north, and that may continue. Again, for us, the Treasure Coast still taking a beating here with very gusty winds. Palm Beach County, still very, very gusty winds, but the very worst of it is behind you. It will slowly start to taper off. Now, the center is north of your latitude. It's almost north of the lake. The lake here, so it's actually maybe in line with Okeechobee at the moment in latitude, and then we'll lift up here, and it'll take a few hours to get up to the north. And you see really that line, kind of easy to tell, guys, that's going a little bit farther to the north. Let's pop up Viper real quick here and take a look at Viper. So this little track that we had, this little shift over here, guys, we got, we were talking about it with Steve. It kind of helped us out a lot, really.
Did it? I was wondering
because if you look at the miles here, I was just talking to Steve about this too. So it was supposed to be, say, around Sarasota. So it's now about 47 or so miles off to the right. Well, if it was shifted over in that direction, well, look at what we would be in. That line would be right over us right now. That's the same amount of miles. So instead, we have this huge line, and this thing is just raging out here. Instead, it's offshore instead of right, because it could have been lined up right here if this storm would have been just over a little bit. So I think even though an eastward shift is closer to us, technically, that we luck out because we're in this really dry slot of air that has moved on through. Still the wind, but at least it's not this raging feeder band that's moving on in.
And just north of Melbourne, then I would assume Daytona Beach, Jacksonville, about to get hammered by that line.
Yeah, and Orlando. I mean, that moved through Orlando. 50+ mile per hour wind gusts, 63 there in Titusville, and Daytona. Look at Daytona, 63. 61, couple of gusts, and that's constant going there. They're getting gusts easily in the 60s here
but look
for
at
the
that.
past couple of hours.
It's swallowing up our entire state. Look at that.
Yeah, amazing.
Massive size.
I mean, Tampa may luck out from this too if it continues, you know, to move in this direction. You know, Tampa's still on this side of the storm, which is somewhat the weaker side. It's not, you know, a cake show for them, but it's not right here either.
Right.
You know, like it was supposed to be right here, and then that would have jammed up into Tampa Bay, and that's what we were expecting for a big storm surge to push everything back up in there.
Sadly, when it's easier for one city, it's harder
It's
for
worse
another.
for another. Yeah,
It's the way
right.
this story is.
So when do you get corroboration? Is it, I guess there's an 11 o'clock track that comes out, so it would corroborate.
Right, so we're
what you're-
close. We're close, 45 minutes or so. I do think they're going to shift it a little bit east here. I just can't see them not doing that. I don't. You know, this may eventually start drifting to the left a little bit, but it's just not doing that right now. So I think we will see a little bit of a change here. And what it means for us, well, like I said, it helped us a little bit that we got into this little dry slot here. We still have a little ways to go, especially the Treasure Coast. You know, we still have a couple of bands here, and we see some, you know, possibly firing back up. Okeechobee's maybe tapering down on the rain, but certainly not the wind. And we have this another feeder band moving into western parts of St. Lucie County. It could pivot back up like this. So not out of the woods for everyone. I know it's still, people are sitting in their house. We were on Facebook Live, and they're saying, this wind, it just won't stop. It's incredible. So we got to wait for another few hours till at least the damaging part will start to taper down a little bit. And I think it's going to still stay very, very windy overnight. And then finally by tomorrow, especially the evening hours, should be safe to go out and start to clean up.
We'll see. It'll be a slow morning because the assessment needs to be done. James, I want to mention very quickly, we're about to introduce someone on the phone here, but you may have seen just as we came to James, he was working on the weather. Jay was using his phone to line up our next guest, which I think a lot of people want to hear from right now.
Yes, James was mentioning the wind gusts up and down the coastline, and throughout the last 24 hours, Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport has been somewhat of a beacon for us, a beacon for our storm team, a barometer, if you will, to study the forecast. And the wind gusts there were ferocious down there. We want to welcome on the phone right now Greg Meyer. He's the Public Information Officer for Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. Greg, how are you tonight?
Doing well, and you guys are doing a fantastic job in keeping us all informed.
Greg,
really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Give us an assessment of the airport right now. You know, as I mentioned, introducing you, it was interesting to see the wind gusts down there. You all had some severe winds through Hurricane Irma. What was it like down there at the airport?
Well, I'll be honest with you. We've got a whole team down there. I'm hunkered down here up in Palm Beach County and working remotely from the house. But I've got someone in the EOC in our Emergency Operations Center. We've got Director of Operations and folks working the airport. We have a damage assessment team that went through the buildings, all 4 terminals this evening.
Okay.
We do have some damage. We have some water intrusion through the roof. We have air conditioning units, chillers on the rooftop that were damaged. We don't know what the damage is to the airfield, to our runway safety lights, status lights, to the air traffic control tower. It's just still too windy and too dangerous to go out there and assess that. We know that one of our runways at the western portion is underwater.
Wow.
And that creates a problem for us. And when the tide goes out, and I know we're coming up on high tide here, I believe at midnight, but your weather team will correct me if I'm wrong. But when the tide subsides, that's when we can have some of the water recede from the runway. But right now, it's not gonna happen tomorrow. We will send out our teams when the wind subsides, daylight hours, go out and see what kind of damage we have to the structure from the outside. But we have challenges and work ahead of us. It's a daunting task. The other challenge we have is we understand there are 4 cruise ships heading to Port Everglades Tuesday, and we're not sure we're going to be ready for them. So we're working with our partners at Port Everglades if the conditions are appropriate for them to come in. But we have to make sure that the airport is 100% and ready to go with everything running. And the airlines have to restage their aircraft. The crews have to come in. A lot of the crews are local. Some of them have to come in from remote areas. So there's a lot of work ahead of us, but we're hoping to open in the next couple of days, but we don't have an exact timeline yet.
So tomorrow you will get your crews there, you think, to begin. You said there are people there already assessing damage, but you'll go and assess some more. And so for the millions of South Floridians who have evacuated and they're wondering, when can I land at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, or for that matter, any other airport in South Florida, what can you tell us about that? What do you say to them tonight?
That's the million-dollar question. Right now, we still have to make sure that everything is safe and secure. We have to deploy all the teams, TSA, all those employees have to come back to the airport and get in position. We have to make sure all the equipment is running. We have to make sure we have all the electricity. We had outages just like the rest of the community. We're on backup generators right now for partial operations. We have to make sure it's safe for everybody to come into the airport. We had 54 people stranded at the airport on Friday that we had to send to three area shelters because the airport is not a shelter. We've been saying that, but sometimes people don't have a choice. They may fly in from a foreign country and not know what's happening in South Florida, and not have a hotel and not have somewhere to go. So we had to accommodate 54 people. We took them by bus to the 3 area shelters down in Broward County. And, it's a lot of work, but we're ready for the task. We're working very closely with Broward Emergency Management to make sure that once the curfew is lifted down there and the roadways are safe and cleared, that the employees can start to come back. We do have a damage assessment team on site. We have maintenance people on site that have ridden out the storm, and we're going to do this as quickly and safely as we can.
Greg, can you talk about, when we talk to people who are experienced like yourself, people who've lived in Palm Beach County, have lived through many, many hurricanes, with regard to Palm Beach, with regard to Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, is this some of the worst conditions that you're hearing right now? I know you haven't been on site yet, and I know there's certainly a lot more assessment to be done, but what you've said sounds like there's some considerable damage there.
Sure
Can you compare this to other hurricanes? I mean, are you looking at one of probably what could be one of the worst damaging hurricanes on this airport?
It's hard to say at this point. I do know we had equipment damaged. Matthew was nothing compared to this. I've been here since David back in '79. I was here through Gene and Francis and Charlie and all the other hurricanes. I wasn't working at the airport at that time, but I can tell you from talking to folks that have been at the airport for 30-plus years, this is the most catastrophic for the region, and it is damaging to the airport as well. Again, we don't know how much equipment of ours was damaged out there. We tried to secure as much as possible. We have 64 passenger loading bridges that had to be secured prior to the storm's arrival, and we don't know what condition those are in. Those are multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment that we do the best that we can to secure, but they are all on hydraulics and electronics and all types of things that they depend on to operate safely. Those are the bridges that connect the concourse to the actual aircraft. It's a daunting task, but we're up to it, and it will take time, but we're optimistic that we can get up and operating as quickly as possible.
I heard you say then, in summary, that you've got damage to some water chillers, you've got water intrusion in the airport itself, and a runway underwater at the least. That's the initial assessment. So you can't give us even an estimate on when Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International may reopen. I would imagine that you interface with your counterparts at PBIA and MIA, Miami International. Any word on those two airports? Can you give us any glimmer of what those two airports could be dealing with?
I generally don't like to speak for other airports, but I have heard through other media outlets that Miami is hoping to open at least partially on Tuesday. That would be in a perfect world for us, but I'm not ready to commit to when we're going to open. They will do it in a phase it in. You know, not all flights are going to operate on that first day for them. Same goes for us. We don't have a runway underwater. We have a portion of the north runway, the western portion, underwater temporarily.
Okay.
But we operate 2 runways there, and the other runway is in good condition as far as we can tell.
Okay.
But again, you have to physically go out there and eyeball it in the daytime. You have to make sure all your lights are working. You have to make sure all the radar for the VFR flight controls, all of the equipment has to be in working order. We're working closely with the FAA as well. We have daily conference calls, actually 2 to 3 times a day. We're on conference calls talking with all the airport stakeholders, from the airlines, from the people that run the concessions, to the people that push the wheelchairs, which all of these things that people don't take into consideration. All of these people have families. All of them are at home. All of them are experiencing everything that the people at home are watching television are experiencing right now. But they're ready to roll when we say let's go.
Well, Greg, we know you have a monumental task ahead of you. We certainly appreciate your time tonight, giving us, our listeners and our viewers, an update on the situation of what's to come. A lot more information to come. We expect to talk to you tomorrow, hopefully. Get some rest tonight, and we'll be in touch. Thank you again, Greg.
Sounds good. Thank you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. I know Ashley Henson has a bit more meat in terms. I know that she has a little bit more to get to, but we'll get to her in just a minute because I think it's relevant, and we should probably go to her. But first, we need to turn it over to weather.
Right. I wanted to mention, real quickly before we do that, the cruise ships. Greg mentioned 4 cruise ships are scheduled to come in on Tuesday. I don't think anyone realized. I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of people that are set to come in. And they have a monumental task tomorrow. So, and I know a lot of people and a lot of our listeners, our viewers, this is a critical area because we have a lot of families in Palm Beach County and across our South Florida viewing area that are going to want family and friends. They're going to want to know and assess the situation. So right now, tomorrow, we're going to get a lot more information on where Fort Lauderdale Airport stands and when that airport will reopen, and of course when Miami and when Palm Beach will reopen. And as soon as we get all that information, we'll certainly let you know.
Again, worthwhile to bring Ashley Henson in as soon as we can, but let's turn it over to weather right now.
All right, gentlemen.
All right, let's take a look because we have a couple of interesting things going on in the weather, to say the least. And I'm going to step over to the key, and James is going to take over the radar. I put some slides together, James, too, on what's going on with this storm. So there's the hurricane's still tracking well west of the lake, and it's not expected to get any closer to us. But look at this; it's fired up. This is one of those feeder bands that has just in really the last 20 to 30 minutes developed, and it is pushing toward the coast of the Treasure Coast. Now that's one feature to notice. Also, that 74-mile-an-hour wind gust. It went from 69 to 74. That's at the St. Lucie County Airport. We've lost a lot of the airport readings. And James, if you just want to kind of spin around and show some of the weather that's happening right now. We also have big weather around the lake. Had a couple emails from the northern side of the lake around Okeechobee. Folks there concerned about, is this going to get much worse, or is this the height of the storm? And because the eye is at its closest approach to Okeechobee, and actually all the northern side of the lake, this is likely when you're going to see the strongest winds now through about the next few hours. I think it's going to improve. It's just going to be a gradual improvement. But there is a solid feeder band that's just fired up with all this tropical air. And our winds at Fort Pierce have bumped up.
Really jumped up there, yeah.
And this is not a surprise. We talked about this all day long, how this would be an evening and likely an overnight event, more so on the Treasure Coast because of the direction of the storm. First, the improvement would be in Palm Beach County, and then heading into the late evening and overnight, it would be on the Treasure Coast. So we're not surprised. I think the one surprising thing is the track of the hurricane, which is, at this point, appears to be more inland than at the coastline. There it is there. There's that eye and the eye wall, which has just ferocious winds. And this is moving more inland than the official forecast. So no adjustments yet, but the Hurricane Center is going to have to make some sort of adjustment here, if I'm reading this right, because we have Tampa over here and we have Orlando up to the north. And this storm appears on this current track, unless there's here's the problem. If there's an adjustment back to the west, I don't see how that's going to happen because we have a big trough here that acts like a wall. And a storm that's got some pretty good forward momentum now. It's almost 14, 15 miles an hour toward the north. And that is a track more toward the Orlando area, or at least between Tampa and Orlando. Can Chris hear me? There's Chris Stewart in the Tampa area. Can you hear me, Chris? Steve Weigel.
Here you, Steve, right here.
Has there been any talk there
Steve,
about
you got me?
Yeah, oh, I can hear you. Any talk there about a little bit of a shift in the track of the hurricane, and maybe a little farther east of Tampa?
They have been talking about that, because I know earlier on in the day, there was concern about, the mayor had said that in the morning in a news conference that this was ground zero for Irma, the city of Tampa, but there has been talk definitely that this storm has been a track a little bit of what they're talking. Were you saying east, a switch east?
It looks like more, on the current track, it would be more between Orlando and Tampa at this point. There's Tampa there, and you have some big bands coming through. You're probably dealing with like off and on feeder bands all night.
Oh, it's definitely starting to pick up here. There was really nothing compared to what last time I talked to you, and I thought that was getting pretty strong. But now it's getting to the point where when the gust happens, you kind of look for something to grab onto. I've fallen over a couple of times, and we're definitely feeling the winds start to pick up here a little bit. I do want to show you, because we're keeping an eye here. We're in the parking lot of our sister station, and I'm just going to turn this light on, this spotlight that I have on. We've been keeping an eye on this stop sign, and it's been going back and forth a little bit, and these are obviously a concern here. That light, the light now shining on that sign as well, but definitely with the increase in wind that we are feeling right now in this area, things are really starting to pick up. We knew that it was going to be picking up, but now we're definitely feeling it for sure, Steve.
Yeah, it is only going to pick up more as the center of the storm, the eye gets a little closer to you, Chris. But we're watching some of those bands as they come in and sweep through your area. I see some of the wind gusts at the airport, 49, 59 miles an hour. We went through the same thing here. It started off slow, and then we peaked around 80 and 90 mile an hour wind gusts through the evening, and we still have around Fort Pierce and Vero, almost 75 mile an hour wind right now in just the last half hour. So it is, it's not only strong in your area, it's also strong on the East Coast too. But you are in for more wind and more feeder bands and more rain for the next few hours. And once this thing gets north of you, you'll start to see an improvement. But you're in for a few hours, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. And we're starting to hear that ominous kind of howling sound that comes with the wind when it really starts to pick up. But definitely here, we've known all day that it was going to pick up as the night continued on, and now we're in that moment where we're starting to feel Irma really start to give some powerful gusts to the city of Tampa. It's interesting. I know we were talking around here, 1921 is a year that people have been talking about a lot today, because that was the last time a hurricane made a hit on Tampa, and now they're definitely feeling it. I can tell you here, power outages more than 200,000, and that number is climbing. And obviously the storm surge is something we'll talk about as the night continues on, and the impact that's going to have the flooding. But right now it's definitely the wind we're feeling here.
All right, be safe out there, Chris, and just be prepared, because the winds are going to get stronger. And watch for any kind of track changes at 11 o'clock. The new forecast from the Hurricane Center will be coming out in just a few minutes. But definitely be safe.
Will do, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, we'll check back with you in a little while. We just got a report. Actually, can we bring James in? We just got a report of some very strong wind showing up on the Treasure Coast around Fort Pierce.
Yeah.